exactly. So
We are recording on Thursday, July 10th, 2025 at 2:04 p.m. Eastern Time. Not live. It'll be up tomorrow with Mr. Tom Luongo and Mr. Dave Collum. You guys can go to the description. You can find both their Twitters. You can find blogs, Patreons, everywhere to subscribe and be part of it and all that good shit and podcasts. And Jim isn't here right now, and it's not unrelated to the Epstein files. So I hope, Jim, I hope he's, I hope there's some level of respect in the Jewish community that they don't kill him because he is an elder. But I don't. Bibi seems ruthless, so I don't know. But yeah, so this is redacted cast with, and it is funny how it's like the day we're going to talk about. I actually made a thumbnail. I just put all the words as redacted, and it's funny because Tom's not in his normal spot and Dave's not in his normal spot. It's just so the schizos are going to be like, it's not them, they're somewhere else, and it's like,
AI. It's
and my
AI.
yeah, and my hair's long for the first time in like 5 years. Like, they're all dead, but. Yeah, for future listeners, all the Epstein cover up, he didn't kill himself, blah blah blah. And I did that episode on Monday with John Cullen and Ian Burlingame. Ian obviously has a special forces background, so I take him seriously, and his whole and it makes sense. And TLDR is that you always make a bigger, more ridiculous cover story to hide something that's even more nefarious, so you don't want to get found out.
Mhm.
So Epstein Island, horrific, raping children. Well, then what could possibly be worse than that? And it's the kind of the end game of all conspiracies, the depopulation, the seizing of the earth through automation by the power elite. It's a big one. On the other hand,
Right.
and I said this on that show, and it's more for myself, is I just have to be very honest with myself and say, 'cause I like Trump, I'm impartial to him, I think he's funny. If someone else was president and this happened, I would, without batting an eye, say he's not releasing it because he's a pedophile and he's on the list. And then
Mhm.
I cannot laugh at and mock liberals for towing the party line and then not say that. So on
Of
one
course.
hand, like EM provides a very attractive explanation, and I'm impartial. It's like UFOs. Like I want to believe, but I have to
Mhm.
just be like very honest and go. Biden's in office, Kamala's in office, fucking Vivek's in office. I go, they're not releasing it because he's a pedophile. And so that's kind of
Mitt
where I
Romney's
am
in office. Same
torn.
thing.
I am dilemma.
Right.
But yeah, Tom, what are your thoughts?
Well, I watched that podcast with DM the other day because I was, it was literally like I watched it about 2 hours after the memo came out. I think you guys did that like right as the memo came out,
Yeah.
and I found it fascinating. And Ian and I have done a couple of shows together. He's been on my podcast. I've done a couple of shows with him, and that was a really interesting reframe on his part, and it's one that I'm partial to because ultimately, and I'm going to preface this by saying, in many ways, Tommy, it's kind of the same thing that you're saying. What do we gain by turning on Trump now? What do we gain by having by saying, okay, well, it's all gone to shit, or we're all going to lose, and everything else. The only thing we lose is our pride, or we because the truth of the matter is that at this moment in time, what all the stops that are being pulled out right now, we could. This is it. Like this is the war. This is what the war looks like. This is when they go for they're going for the
Going for
one,
2 points. Yeah.
and either Trump is working with them or he's against them or he's compromised or whatever. So my position is really simple. I'm willing to go with that as long as a framework, what the in effect what EM was talking about, and then look for other evidence along the same lines in other aspects of the administration. So I'm looking at like what Trump is trying to do um, through the changing of tax policy, the changing of um, of how we have tariff policy and all of that stuff. Because is any of that still anathema to the old, for lack of a better term, the old British system of debt and fiat currency and central banking? And if as long as that part of the narrative continues to hold together, then I'm going to continue to play this out because someone has to,
Yeah.
right? And given my background, and given where I've placed myself in the entire chain of events, it makes sense that I have to hold on to that role, even if I'm even if I'm not convinced that either Trump is not on the list. I don't think Trump is. I honestly don't think Trump is on the Epstein list at all. I flat out do not believe that. But do I believe that he could be compromised in some way? Of course. Does he have children? Of course. So everybody has a price at some point, right? So the bigger question is, in the short term, this feels like an orgy of evidence, right? There's like a moment in Minority Report, right, where they try to frame the guy for kidnapping Tom Cruise's kid, right? Remember that
Yeah.
scene? And they describe, and Colin Farrell describes it as an orgy of evidence, and we're getting that orgy of evidence right now. Like we just had the thing this morning. Some chick came out and said, "Oh no, I was there. I watched Trump like have sex with 5-year-olds or some shit like that." I'm like, all right, if they had that information, they would have used it on him 10 years ago. Like to me, and the framework that I've been living with for a while now is we're in an age of rapidly depreciating old assets. All of these assets, Epstein, Israel, Iran conflict, Ukraine, Russia, this, that, all of these things are all rapidly depreciating assets. What do you do with rapidly depreciating assets? You either cut bait on them and sell them off if you're a company, spin them off and spin them off into a shit company and let them go. But in real terms, in something like this, you try and milk every last bit of value out of the cat. And right now, throwing shade on Trump, which they've been setting up with the Epstein files for years, is what they're doing right now. And Trump, being Trump, says, "Look, I made a deal behind the scenes. You know, I made a deal behind the scenes. That's where we are. We're moving forward, and we're not. We're and I'm not. And that's my read on the situation. I'm happy to run that framework, and I'm also happy to listen to people tell me that he's compromised. Um, but if someone doesn't at least present that argument, then we're in an echo chamber created by people who are created by intelligence assets, because that's what it is. So that's in the broad strokes. That's my case. So
Mm, I'll let Dave get in here.
Dave,
Yeah, real quick. Let me just say one thing though is that's something I kind of walked out of my own mind a couple months ago was, it's kind of like that, you have the ballot box and then the soap box and then the jury box and then like the cartridge box, right? It's like you have these different ways to get out. Same thing with with like a president they don't like. You can say he was installed, and then you can steal an election, and then you can try to sue him. And when none of that works, you finally try to kill him. Like, okay, before killing him, wouldn't you use the Epstein asset? Because killing him is a big final step. So I'm with you, Thomas. Wouldn't you burn that before trying to kill him?
well, yes, it's a good question, and it's a good progression of events. What I said all last year was that what they were planning on doing, because they were planning on using Trump's love of Israel against him in the election. You could see it setting up with the whole post 10/7 thing, where one side took the pro-Palestinian position, knowing full well that Trump would take the pro-Israel position. I was fully expecting them to use that during the campaign. They didn't, right? And I think that after the failed assassination attempt, they knew that they couldn't use it against them, so they held it for when they were going to like throw things out there today, right? Because here we are, a couple of weeks after the 12-day war, where Trump apparently took Israel's side, and I still don't buy that argument completely either, because I still think that we wound up with the closest thing to my optimal outcome, which was a tie and a lot of injuries, where both sides, you know, shot their wad and took a punch in the mouth, and now they're like two drunken boxers in round 12 trying to see who falls down first, if they haven't already both fallen down and now trying to stand back up like the end of Rocky 2. And now here we are 2 weeks later with the whole Epstein thing. So this is, to me, this feels like the extension of all that. You guys can chime in here at any moment
Dave?
to argue with me about it, because I'm
I'm not
happy
sure what the theme is, and I apologize. I'm running a little late.
Oh, we
you
know.
know
Oh, we know.
We
Did
know
you
what
did?
you
We
we
knew it.
discuss what you're doing with
but
the
Dave's heard my entire
chickens.
rant up to
That's all
this point,
right.
so I was
Did
mostly throwing it open to Dave, Jim,
did
and
did
welcome.
did you
And
say that something happened today? That some event has happened today? I'm not
Not
aware of
today.
that.
Not today.
Talking about
other
the
than
Epstein
other than what
files.
I
So that
saw this
was,
morning
yeah.
about
Uh,
Trump is definitely on the tapes at Epstein Island. Some chick came forward today with this, and I'm like, so the latest
I'm
version of
I'm
the
shocked.
Lazy Forward is out there? Yeah, come on, give me a break. So
But
I don't
Dave's
know, Dave.
been
What do
here,
you think
so
about
yeah,
all
yeah, Dave, chime in because you've been here.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with any of that. I put various statistical weightings. I think if they had videos of Trump banging young chicks, I think we would have seen it any time in the last dozen years. And you say, well, now you use it to compromise the guy in power, but it was clear their primary game plan to make sure he never got into power. So I think they would have pulled it out. And I think Trump shows, he obviously has grabbed a lot of pussy, as he said, but I don't. There's too many people who know him who say that's just not who he is. So I would comfortably bet a lot of money against the model that he's compromised on the Epstein files per se. I think he. Hold on just a second. I'm in the middle of talking. What? It doesn't. It's not the right one. Here, Candace. There you go. There you go, right here. You think that's bad? She walked in front of the camera in her underwear in a more recent podcast. Someone says, "Oh, pants are optional."
They always are. They always are.
I don't see anything on any of the aggregators about some woman claiming that Trump was on Epstein Island.
But even so, you could find 10 of them who could be paid off and say it, and it doesn't mean
Where'd
shit.
you see that?
My people found it this morning. I tweeted it. I retweeted it. I don't know. I can find it for you if you want. It's not a big deal.
I probably didn't see it after you blocked me, Tom.
Oh yeah, I absolutely blocked it, Dave.
I know. I was a little. I figured it was a Twitter glitch, but I was sitting there going, "What? You've done like 12 podcasts, and then he blocks me. I must have made a London joke or something." Right? And I was thinking
we know you suck beefy.
I figured, my headphones needed to be charged. I'm thinking, well, I'll just get Tom mad about something, and that'll buy me the time to charge my headphones. So I have a number of thoughts about a number of things that seem to be tied together. One is I think they way underestimated the damage they did by playing it the way they did it. I think this Epstein thing is a big fucking disaster, and I don't think it's going to go away. And so there's some really bad parts of it. Like when Bondi said, the thing that really bothered, Bondi's obviously worthless. She's an idiot. And the only thing she is she's still humpable. The bad part was when she referred to all the thousands of hours of tapes and how it's just pedophilia and child porn, and we're not going to see it because it's just disgusting. And I'm going, no, that's not acceptable. Because some adult was sticking it up some kid's ass and all that footage, and so blur out the kids and let's see the faces of the guys, giving panda eyes to the children.
Yeah.
Right. And so that to me is an absolutely unacceptable answer, and it's sort of an appalling lie. And if they had simply said, look, for various complicated reasons we can't release them, and then people bitch, I think that would have been okay. So the fact that they took this absolutely 100% the wrong direction. I did a poll today. Do you think, the Epstein story is a bunch of lies or is it the truth? And it got over a sample size of 100 pretty quickly with 100 to 0 ratio on that vote. Nobody buys the story. I think the capital they burned is humongous. And I think any variation that would have involved saying, sorry, life's tough, but you ain't getting it, right? Rather than the stuff they said would have been okay. We would have said, okay, there's too many prime ministers, of which there could be literally 100 of them. Remember the 5 prime ministers in Africa who defied the vaccination, who all died. So prime ministers are owned by the deep state. And then I think it really all comes down to being compromised by Israel.
Yeah,
I think it's all about Israel.
It's so absurd that you do start wondering, like, it's like the best example ever of Trump being like, we got to deport all these gangs back in like 2016, and they're like, there are no gangs, we don't need to deport anyone, and Trump goes, well, there was 48 gang shootings last year, and CNN was like, there was 44, and then he was like, oh, well, that's still a lot, and everyone was like, oh shit, that's 44 that I knew of. If it was anyone else, but Trump does, and this is where I am biased towards him, but he does kind of do this maestro shit, and this is so absurd. that I'm almost like,
Well,
what could be the what could happen in a week where we go, oh, like what
There
is
are an
that? Oh,
awful lot of theories that are floating around out there to try to make sense of this, which it's hard to do.
Mhm.
But and they're kind of hidden strains of ideas. One of them is that somehow this is really more about China and what China's got and what maybe we have on China, and that maybe that it's used as some sort of leverage against either America's enemies or Trump's enemies or some combination of that, and that it has value being hidden for that reason. Now, I don't, that's the theory of a number of people. I don't know. Another theory is that when Netanyahu came over here last week, that he said, you got to just kill this Epstein investigation or we'll never have peace in the Middle East. And Trump made a calculation and said, well, I'd rather have peace in the Middle East, and this is going to be painful, but we're going to have to dump this thing.
so yet another Netanyahu lie, because he could say that 10 fucking times and I'd believe him precisely 0 times.
Well, yeah,
I agree.
maybe. I'm not sure that I distrust him that much. Um, Another thing that occurred to me that I haven't heard anybody else say is that people are so upset about this failure, this fiasco, that it might actually prompt some of the journalists and reporters in the mainstream media to actually do some investigative
That
reporting
would
for a
be great.
change.
that's what I mean. Like
I mean, even
that's
the
the
Trump
thing.
haters are going to maybe say, there's a story here. I'm going to go in there, and for the first time in 10 years, we'll see investigative journalism.
Well, it's like
Yeah, that
all
would be
over
nice.
Reddit right now is people being like, demand he release the files.
Yeah.
There
But
is
there must
somewhere
be
you
some
go.
enterprising young reporters who are, 30 years old and raring to go on the Washington Post and the New York Times who are saying, fuck all of this get Trump shit. I'm just going to devote myself to this story for a year because it's a really wild story.
The
Hmm.
other, the other angle on this, and that's a very good point, Tim. So thank you for bringing that up because I think that's a valuable. No, I think it is a valuable perspective that people haven't really been considering, which is the other thing, which is a lot of people knew what was going on during World War II, and the Nuremberg trials didn't happen until after the war was over. Like that's a point that one of my patrons made to me this morning, and we were discussing a bunch of this stuff, and we were chatting on Slack about this morning, and I was like, that's a really good point. Like this is a kind of thing that we can't deal with right now, and that we're in the middle of what is clearly a war. Okay, whether you think Trump is the right general for this war or you don't, he's the general you got, warts and all, flaws and all, and everything else. And to Dave's point about how badly this was handled, this is very typical of Trump. One of his flaws as a human being is his inability to take responsibility, say he was wrong, and then move on and just say that. He can't do that. He's never been that way. He wasn't trained that way. It's not his personality. It's always been one of his personal defects as a human being. And as a leader, I think
Yeah.
that's one of his. And I think that was And the other side of this is, again, I'm not trying to get 4D chess about this or anything, but at the end of the day, he's like, I got the bill done, which is what he cared about. The bill getting passed was what he wanted. Now we can argue about what we believe and what we don't believe about the bill. I tend to fall into the camp, not even tend to, I think flat out, if you want to get through the next 2 years and get to the midterms where you have a chance of actually winning, given the situation, you had to get this done. You had to defang the people in Congress that are your biggest problem, right? The Supreme Court's given him a pass to now actually execute his Article 2 powers, right? We have that. You get the bill passed. Now they don't need Congress for pretty much anything other than adding to the win, right? Because they're funded through the midterms. So now they can start working on the other parts of the agenda to start fixing things. So
He could have said what you just said.
I agree. I agree.
But you know,
Guess what? And guess what, Dave? If his name was Tom Luongo and not Donald Trump, then he would have.
you know,
Probably.
people give
That's
him
a great point.
And there's no known
we'd
cure.
be prowling through the Epstein list over 24 hours a day if his name was Luongo, looking for that fucker. So
people give Trump
true,
so
yeah.
much credit for being a great communicator, but he is actually amazingly inarticulate at times. And that was
Yes.
one of that was one of the times. You know, another thing that I want to ask you, Tom, because it came up in several bits that people sent me over the last 24 hours, is there's another theory that because the UK and MI6, their intelligence outfit, was so deeply entwined in the whole Russiagate thing and in other historical fuckeries, that Trump is somehow using this as a lever against the UK. And not only the UK, but the UK, the Bank of England, and the globalist cabal that has been creating so much trouble for Western Civ, among other things, constantly prompting this conflict with Russia and creating this permanent class of enemy nations that we have to battle all the time.
Jim, it's not a bad take, right? And what I'll say is this: what's the value of the Epstein list as it stands today? It's still secret.
no, it
Yeah,
still has blackmail
exactly.
potential. Right.
Exactly.
No.
So, if you ask your best people, Kosh Patel, Dan Bongino, and I don't know about Pam Bondi. All I know is that Susie Wiles is a fucking problem. I've known this for a long, long time. Dexter White and I have been talking about the problem of having Susie Wiles as Trump's chief of staff from going back to the Matt Gaetz debacle and the situation between him and Ron DeSantis, which DeSantis is doing everything he can to try and fix, right? But that's all been driven by Susie Wiles. So there's a lot of intrigue on that front as well. The City of London angle is very important. What came out this morning? Is that this is going to sound like a digression, but it's not. Now we have to go look into other areas to see if we can figure out if the City of London angle is correct, which is that Besant and company, they have just announced that there will be no more reporting of crypto transactions by the platforms via 1099 AD or whatever the hell it is. The similar that you get that your stockbroker sends the IRS of all your sales, right? So that now you no longer have to incriminate yourself about your crypto trades. I want you to think about that for a second, because when you start to go through why the stable bill,
to the point you don't even pay taxes.
Yeah, because they're trying to get rid of capital gains tax on them at this point. They want to get rid of capital gains tax and stable coins. So this is a means by which to start moving
You've got a stalker behind you. You've got a stalker behind you. She's got a knife. Quick.
That would be my wife, by the way.
Okay, then I know she has a knife, and you definitely should duck.
You're fucked.
You're fucked. You're fucked. She's probably putting arsenic in your coffee.
Yeah, rest in peace.
She probably actually no. She can't do that until after we get all the stuff done with getting the house built up here in Tennessee, so that she can have her final plate.
So her second husband will have a nice place to stay in, right?
Miss Luongo, bide your time. Bide your time. Be patient.
Be patient.
I've been slow rolling this on purpose, guys. Yeah. So, but understand that the City of London / Davos or globalist, central banking, debt, and taxes business model is fundamentally threatened by what Trump is doing with tariffs, the bill, stable coins, and all the rest of it. Absolutely the case. And so, this is why I'm just not I get why Trump is like, look, why are we still talking about Epstein? Of course, because it makes him look. Honestly, the way he responded to the reporter the other day made him look guilty.
Yeah, that was bad.
Right? It was terrible. I was like, oh my God, don't just answer the question directly and move and say, look, this is just something we have to just. This is a shit sandwich. We have to take a bite of.
Here's the problem.
Because we got other
Here's
wins,
the problem.
and we just didn't. He wouldn't do it. He's Trump.
This is not going to go away. Because when you're banging little kids, and you are a person, you are many people of considerable prominence. The world hates Bill Gates now. The world hates some of these guys. I just don't think this is going away. They needed some way to say, be patient, which is what you said. And so they boned it, and Trump's not. Here, I've been thinking about a number of things. One is I've been thinking about the challenge of being a blogger, which two of you are, and I am not. I write one blog a year. One of the challenges I would personally have is if I wrote a blog a week, within about 3 weeks would be complete garbage nonsense because I wouldn't know how to see through the noise. And so
That's not necessarily true. I published
no, it
a
isn't
book.
For you,
I published a book of my blogs called Crazy Land, and I've gone back and read them, and a lot of them there's a clear thread that stands up through the whole thing.
You're better than me. I'd write total garbage. And
the problem. Funny.
So one of the advantages I've thought about is my one blog a year is it gives me time, first of all, to let a story get boring and go away.
Right.
And second of all, still let a story, sit in the crock pot for a very long time. And now you might have the ability to leave it in the crock pot until it's ready, which is really the key. But on stories like this, if you're not blogging on it, they're not reading your blog. And so I do not have the skills to cut through the debris as quickly as that. And so my weekly blog would be just garbage, in my opinion, just because I wouldn't be able to get through it. So I'm sympathetic to that.
What's interesting, Dave, is that over the course of the last 6 to 8 months, I've stopped publicly blogging, and I only really write. The only writing I do on a regular basis now is just the 2 newsletters that I write, and I do, I do 3 podcasts a week privately for subscribers. 2 for my Gold, Ghosts, and Guns subscribers, and 1 for Newsmax. So on Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
With guests.
No. These are me just talking directly to my subscribers over slides. So I do those. And these are behind the paywall. Forget all the other.
Okay.
Forget all the other
stuff. Okay.
So if anything, I've become more of a podcaster with a newsletter writer. And I don't do the public blog writing as often as possible, as often as I did. What's interesting, to Jim's point, as these events keep rolling out, I keep going back to stuff I wrote 2018, 2017, 2019, 2020, and going, I told you all this was going to happen then. Or this is aged really well. Oh, by the way, this is an angle on this that I wrote about back then. I did this the other day when we were talking about. When I did the what we call the market reports for the Gold, Ghosts, and Guns subscribers yesterday for Wednesday. I did one yesterday morning. I linked to Tommy's podcast with Ian Burlingame and John Collum, which brought a great perspective on this. And I said, oh, by the way, conservatives are easy to outrage on this stuff because they have a very low discuss circuit. And I went back to the blog I wrote about Kavanaugh and the Kavanaugh gangbang story and all the rest of it. How over the course of time, the whole nuts and sluts argument about how to get rid of people, how they always just like nuts and sluts somebody out of existence. I went back and I said, look, they're doing this with Donald Trump. They're doing this with Kavanaugh now. What started as Gary Hart in 1980 having an affair that killed his career has turned into...
And that was just a picture of him on the monkey business. That was unbelievably easy to get rid of him in those days.
Right.
That wouldn't get you 20 seconds of fame in the modern era.
But as we've gone along, every time you use that, we get used to that level of debauchery. So now it's kind of like behavioral heroin, right?
Now you need children.
So now we get all the way to the end of it, and now we have to, and then the Trump dossier. What do we all remember about the Trump dossier? Well, that Trump pissed on a hooker in a Moscow hotel room. We don't remember anything else but the dossier, but we remember that because that's what they tried to get him on. They remember grabbing by the pussy. They remember this. So it's a typical nuts and sluts thing. And because he's Donald Trump, he's mostly immune to it. He's been able to weather it. But when we get to trying to stop Brett Kavanaugh, it's Christine Blasey Ford and a college gangbang that nobody remembers, right? Now we're up to Epstein, and now we're up to Epstein.
There's a new wrinkle on this too that also came to me over the last day or so, which is that if you go back to, I think the year was 2007 when Epstein was first prosecuted in Florida, and I think that was a federal prosecution because the prosecutor was a guy named Alex Acosta, who later became Trump's first Secretary of Labor, which, by the way, the Department of Labor is in charge of child exploitation and abuse. And Alex Acosta, the information that came to me was that Alex Acosta came up with some kind of an immunity agreement that that Epstein signed and that the U.S. government signed, which basically said that they were not going to bring him to trial for anything else ever
Mhm.
again. And so that when he's sitting in that jail in Manhattan, that he knows that this isn't going to work. His lawyers are going to get him off. And because he's got this signed agreement. And so his brother has maintained ever since that that was the primary reason that he couldn't have committed suicide because he knew that he was not going to remain in trouble.
Right.
Is Alex Acosta the one, and I don't want to slander him, this is a big slander. Is he the one who hit the quote is, I was told to leave Epstein alone because he's
Yeah,
intelligence?
because
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Is he an intelligence out?
What an
That was the one statement that came out after
It's
all
over
these
there.
years, during all these years, that actually kind of blew the game.
Yeah.
And the funny
Well,
part,
I
here's the other.
also think I would not bet my life on the fact that he was dead.
Yeah.
Possible. Yeah,
I
we
think
know
yeah.
that angle of the story is still kind of going. Yeah.
You
Oh,
could
no.
wheel that carcass out real easily, and he could be a Jane Epsteinoid, Jane Epsteinoid on some Caribbean island,
Yeah.
ugly
Absolutely.
transgender, right?
No, 100%. And you do kind
Well,
of
the
have to
and
do that because, sorry, for future honeypot operations, don't you want to give him some insurance to be like, hey, Jeff's not actually dead. Here he is.
Well,
Don't you?
the other thing is a guy who's been doing that for 40 years knows what a kill switch is. And
Yeah.
so it's not like
Dead
he
man, you mean a
it,
dead man switch?
Yeah.
well,
yeah, dead
it's
man.
got both, right? But yeah, dead man switch. And so it's not like he couldn't have said, "Hey, dude, in case you're wondering, I do have a dead man switch, right?"
And
Anthony Weiner's laptop's never been opened up, right? He
Mhm.
survived that, and his laptop was filled with shit.
maybe he's not the mastermind. Maybe he's a pawn. Maybe he's just like
He's always been a lieutenant. I've always
maybe
thought of
he's just like
Epstein as a
me, who's
lieutenant.
like, I don't know how to set up a kill switch. Like,
No, you can't be in that game for 45. If
Yeah.
we all know about it, he sure as fuck knew about
maybe
it.
he was blackmailed.
It
Well,
doesn't, you don't kill yourself. I agree. The analysis is that
Yeah, sorry.
he's gotten off so many goddamn
All
times.
right.
You wouldn't all of a sudden say, "Oh, I'm dead." Look, they didn't even get Diddy, right?
Yeah.
They really
All
didn't
right.
get Diddy, right? And
Well,
Diddy
they
that
weren't
was
was,
trying to get
Maureen
Diddy.
Comey.
I
Remember?
know, isn't that?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
they weren't trying to get Diddy.
as
Dave,
she was, I know. That's my point.
yeah.
They don't want any of them.
And this becomes the real question. If he was an intelligence asset, which there's a very small probability that he wasn't, he was clearly an intelligence asset. One of the things there's two things that I want to bring up real quick, for us to chat about. One, whose intelligence asset was he? Was he? Everybody wants to believe he's Mossad. One if he's just CIA or MI6
Or
and
all of the above.
and or all of the above. But what if he's really primarily CIA and MI6, and then the Mossad thing is a convenient thing? Because remember, since 10/7, Israel as the bad guy has been the
Fair.
narrative, right? That's the
And I
narrative.
don't, by the way, I don't buy that altogether myself. Just
I
saying.
don't either, Jim. I'm saying that's the narrative. I'm not subscribing to the narrative.
Well,
I'm not
but he's
subscribing to
with
it.
Ghislaine the whole way, and it'd be hard to disconnect her from Israel.
Sure, and Robert Maxwell,
Yeah, Robert
and
That's
Maxwell.
Admiral
right.
Safra, and
Right.
Bill Browder, and MI6. This all
Earl
goes back.
Browder. And by the way,
This goes
Earl
all the
Browder,
way
his
back to those
father
guys.
was a royal pain in the
Okay,
ass too.
well,
So
This goes back to all of those guys. So that's the first point. The second one is this: what if Epstein's heyday was over after he got, as Ian Burlingame pointed out, he got the Clinton Foundation set up, he got this NGO set up, he got that, which was the real operation, and then he was done. And then after that, and he was done at that point, and then he was just running his own book after that, which no one has even thought about, but has thought about. But Dexter White and I played that scenario out, privately a couple of weeks ago. Just like, what if he was just running his own book at that point, and then he became a liability. They cut him loose, or he's done, and then at that point he's just continuing to do the same thing. But he's always out there that you can turn him into a thing for that we can then hang somebody else with. And remember, Trump is hanging out in New York, building buildings and everything else during his heyday. Correct? We all know that you can't get a building built in New York if you're not somewhat dirty, because you got to talk to the concrete union guys, and you got to talk to the mob, and you got to do this, and you got to do that. And all that stuff is just the way things are. And so getting a photograph, or even a bit of video with Trump and Epstein is easy. You can even get Trump to say something dumb because he doesn't know how to keep his mouth shut, right?
That's what
So,
I call guilt by
and then you throw
proximity.
that stuff up 30 years later, and then you call it evidence, and you let the world let the world.
You
And this is
can't
classic fucking MI6 shit, dude. That's what I'm
you
getting.
can't convict anyone of fame and fortune or power who's photographed with someone else of fame and fortune and power. They all hang out together. So, and Epstein being a professional networker, his job was to connect with any person of fame and fortune in any place in the world. And so all those proximity arguments are bullshit. Now, the other thing, and I don't know if we should go there yet, but I think the hit on the nukes was a total fake.
Go ahead.
I don't.
Explain.
Well, so Trump is trying to negotiate supposedly. The rumor is that Iran got the nukes, got whatever they wanted out of their facilities. Now, here's the thing that I would say with great confidence, that Iran must have some sense of what our bunker busters can do. Right up the lake, we've got a salt mine that goes down 2 miles. So you can go deeper than any bunker buster can go. So I don't think Iran is stupid enough to put a bunker buster, to put an important nuclear facility of any kind 20 feet underground. So as a consequence, I think the story. Here's what the story. Here's my fantasy fabrication. Trump reaches out to Iran, says, "We're coming. Get out of the fucking way. We're gonna bomb your mountains a couple of times to make it look good." Iran says, "Well, we're gonna have to look like we retaliated, so we're gonna bomb some irrelevant airfield of the United States." We both agree that no one dies, right? We go, right, and so then we do it. And then what do? They then say to Netanyahu, "Shut the fuck up now." And it would be a great play. And
that's
Netanyahu,
exactly my take.
And Netanyahu would know we did that. There's no way he doesn't know that. But on the public stage, he has now been told, now you don't get to go bomb in Iran because of some 2 week from now nuclear weapon argument. So I think that whole thing was, I think that's what I would do. As soon as that sort of started to crystallize in my skull, I said, that's what I would do.
Well, it's not a permanent fix, though, because what you'd have to assume from that is that Iran spent all these years and all this money supporting Hamas and Hezbollah for no good reason, and that they're so easily pushed around to be able to fall into this kabuki theater thing. I'm not so sure.
I don't think they fell
that.
into it. I think Iran was on the side of the kabuki theater. I think Trump and Iran duped Israel.
Yeah,
the way I would reframe that, just to talk about to address Jim's argument here, is that Trump's goal is to get the perpetual argument about won't they get Iran get a nuclear weapon. You take away Israel's casus belli, right? But at the same time, you also have to take away Iran's casus belli.
Right.
You're going to get peace in the Middle East. You've got to get both of them to get rid of their casus belli against the other.
And I guess the part I don't get is, what's Iran's casus belli? Just the existence of Israel.
The constant. No, it's not Israel per se. It's what Israel represents, which is the goal of the globalist cabal centered around City of London and Europe to continually break up Central Asia and to keep the world at chaos. Look, the British foreign policy, for lack of a better term, I'm using British, but I really mean it in a much greater context the older I get, is that the way you maintain your position on the world stage is to keep everybody else from getting too big.
Right.
So whenever anybody starts to, it's the tall poppy syndrome at the geopolitical level. Anytime anybody gets big, you knock them down, right? And so you can't have Russia getting big. If you do, you can't have China getting big. If you do, then you have to have the United States as your bully, and you're losing control of the United States, and you got to build up China, which is what they did. as they were using up the United States during all the during the dollar reserve standard years, which I would say ended in 2008. You're building up China the entire time with the intent of moving all of your assets to China. Well, what if China and the United States go, you know what? Now what? And that's where I see all this. So at the end of the day, like that's the game I've been, or the game. That's the framework that I keep analyzing all these moves in the context of. I'm not doing so, and I'm doing so not trying to take sides. My side is that I'm an American, and
So
I want America.
here's a part of the puzzle that I don't get.
And I only know one way of getting out of it at this point, which is to get rid of all of them.
Here's a part of the puzzle that I don't get is if the UK, Great Britain, is controlling all of these moves.
It's not just UK, but yes.
Well, if it is, I don't get how the UK can manage that being the sclerotic nation that it actually is right now.
Because you're thinking about it you're not thinking about it from the perspective of the money, City of London, the central bank networks, the old 400 years worth of Dutch British control over the global monetary system that they've had and global trade that they've had. They have relationships in banks that none of us have ever heard of.
So
the model is that London is like the Vatican sitting in the middle of the UK.
I'm just not sure that the capital that you're talking about is actually there or exists at all.
I think we're at the end of their ability to thing, because this whole system that they've been running for, I don't know, 300, 400 years now. Pick your start date. I don't really care. Everybody's got a different start date on this when you start going back in time. What I'm saying is we're reaching the end of that, because you now have a United States that's big enough to stand on its own. You've got China who's big enough to stand on its own. You've got the Russians who are trying to stand, who have effectively jacked out of the system and standing on their own. Like, remember, they were thrown out of and Iran has basically been trying to do the same thing after Obama threw them out of SWIFT in 2011. Right? All of these are depreciating assets. SWIFT itself is a depreciating asset. The central banks themselves are depreciating assets. Like the whole sovereign debt system is a depreciating asset that needs to be dealt with.
So how much is Donald Trump trying to shove the UK and the EU off the game board? Is he trying real hard?
I think that's his ultimate strategic goal. And that's why he's willing to cut whatever deals he has to in order to get this done. And if you don't show us the Epstein list, okay. I mean, like I don't know that I'm right about this, okay, but this is the way I'm trying. I didn't even think Trump understood this until friggin' December until a month after the election. Like I was thinking in these terms, but I'm like, there's no fucking way Donald Trump of all people that he understands.
Well, he was in the presidency for 4 years, so he was getting some feedback.
Well, yeah, Dave, to your credit, what I'm saying, what I'm saying is I'm actually pointing a finger at myself saying I didn't give him enough credit.
I think that Russiagate also schooled him about the potency of MI6 and the UK.
And
I think they're very good at this kind of operation. Very good on the ground. They don't have a lot of ground operations. They still have this stuff. And I think they're using all of those. I think they're burning every asset they have, is what I'm getting at. And I think that we're watching the process of them burn. This is if that I'm not saying that it's correct, then there is a definite end.
Tom, you're on dial-up.
And that what we're watching now, how many assets are being burned in order to put us in the state that we're in. Bitching.
Are you guys getting fragmentation?
Yeah.
Tom,
you're breaking up hard.
I think it's MI5.
It's MI5. It'll come back. It broke up earlier and it came back. But yeah, I don't.
There goes my thesis statement.
That's the thing that came.
My kingdom for a little bandwidth. There goes
this idea of the tallest poppy makes total sense in the Middle East. That looks like a U.S. foreign policy.
It's backwards, Jim.
And
it looks forwards in my thing.
It's backwards in mine. Just read it for us.
I can't read.
Tom is all broke up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Tom is breaking up.
You're back now, but
Yeah, it was
We
a.
missed most of that whole
It's funny. It came through.
3 minutes.
Your
Oh,
voice
I'm
came
so.
back, and you
I'm
go,
really
"That was my
sad.
thesis." It was kind of
Yeah,
comical.
all that
You
came
got
through
a
was
lot of good still
a thesis
shots.
statement. All I was really trying to say is that is and I'll try and make it short so you guys can which is look, if they're burning up all their assets. This is the Ian Burns.
Who's
Who's
they
they?
burning up what assets, Ryan? Who's they
They're
burning
burning
up?
up things like
Who's they?
the Israel-Iran conflict is a major asset that they're burning up.
Who's they? Now you broke up again.
They have broken him up.
City of London or like is this now bad really bad with this? This is hilarious.
This is now it's kind of now you kind of get it's getting a little eerie. You're like, wait,
I was on a signal call with an
I'm sorry.
intelligence guy, and he
Okay.
said, "Do you use?" I'm not a signal. I was on a phone call, and he says, "Do you use Signal?" He's a foreign intelligence guy, and he says, "Do you use Signal?" I said, "Sure." And he says, "Let me call you on Signal." And then he said, "Someone was listening to us."
yeah, I mean,
And well, they're in theory they're listening to everything, but something on his phone told him that there was some third party involved all of a sudden.
yeah, I just
He
assume.
had something to tell him that.
Yeah, I just
So,
assume it all is.
oh, I do too, but it was a little weird that he had something that detected it.
Yeah,
Hmm.
no, yeah.
Hey, can we talk about Brennan Comey popping up?
Those douchebags, talk about
Yeah.
poppies that ought to be clipped down to the ankles.
Yeah. Because all of a sudden now, we get that event at the news conference on Tuesday where Trump loses it a little and the whole Epstein thing blows up in America's face. And then now, like 36 hours later, Jim Comey and John Brennan are about to be indicted, apparently.
Yeah.
Really.
You didn't see that?
I've been off radar. I got a lot of shit going on right now, which is
Mm.
why getting to this podcast was hard.
Mhm.
And I've also been trying to tune this shit out because I do believe that at some point in the months from now period, I'll be able to read about it after the fact, and it won't be so chaotic. I find this is like watching the news now is like when your GPS starts rerouting you randomly. And
True.
so I realize I'm burning a ton of ATP and my brain is filling up with debris. And so I've been doing other things like spray washing my deck, but I do pick it up at night and I watch and again, I think the Epstein story is way bigger because I think there's literally hundreds of millions of Americans who want that fucking information.
I don't think there's much more for us to say about that right now, though, other than the fact that that this population of the discontented is really
Huge.
it's gonna be a huge problem. And you get to the basic trust horizon issue about whether or not people are gonna trust anything that Trump does now.
Well,
But
I put out a tweet that went viral. I said TDS now means Trump disappointment syndrome.
yeah,
And
but that's why I
I
think
agree
Brendan.
with the idea of don't abandon him,
Mhm.
but we have to keep his feet to the flames and say
Sure,
don't
sure.
don't abandon us.
But
Well,
that's
and
why I
that's
think this Brennan and
Right?
Comey business is important because,
If
people have been waiting for 11 years for fate to catch up with these two characters, and it looks like
Mhm.
it's finally going to happen. And also, they came out with a statement today, the FBI did, that there are other figures who are going to probably be targets for the investigation around Brennan and Comey. So this might actually be the unraveling of the
the
whole
big
Russiagate
thing,
thing,
the
finally,
big thing.
finally,
Did you
including
see
maybe
the
Obama.
did you see Biden's doctor plead the fifth 14
Sure,
times in a row? Now, let
sure
me ask you
did.
this question, Wax. Can they offer him immunity and say, now you got to answer the question in that setting? Is that
I
illegal?
think that they have various strategies, tactics, and devices they can use to make them say more.
Right.
Yeah,
And so,
and
so
immunity
the
would
point
certainly
being,
be one.
the point being is that when they ask him questions and he asks for immunity, we don't care about hanging his doctor.
Yeah, of course
No
not.
one wants his fucking doctor. The
Yeah,
fact that
no.
they don't give him immunity and say, now tell us, means they don't want his doctor either.
Wow.
This is
Yeah.
all just for show. This is all just kabuki theater.
I think Jim's point about the about Brendan and Comey is the important one. I'll be honest with you, I would much rather see Brendan and Comey hang for Russiagate and everything else than I care one whit about Jeffrey Epstein at this point.
I kind of feel the same way.
I
I just don't give a fuck anymore about Jeffrey Epstein.
I don't either.
I,
And that's part of the reason why I was like, yeah, I kind of felt Trump when he was like, why are we still talking about this guy? What's going on? We got bigger fish to fry. We've got things to deal with. And in that moment, like, knowing the pressure that he's under right now and the shit that he's having to deal with, I can see Trump like losing it a little bit. And he's kept it together remarkably well. But if they go after Brendan Comey and they uncovered that part of it, then I'm okay with it because that's far more important.
no,
That's really cleaning up what's going on here. Because here's the other thing. One of the other angles on Epstein, just the last point to make, is this. It all goes away. That means that everybody who's in Congress who lives in fear of them being on the tapes coming out no longer has to worry about that. Their gib was that, and that's why they voted for the big beautiful bill. And how effectively, hey, my
So why did
brethren all failed the fucking loyalty test, every goddamn one of them.
Why have three of my more favorite politicians, Ron Johnson, Thomas Massey, Rand Paul, and MTG, why have they turned against Trump, or is that all just part of the theater?
I'm going to be honest with you, Dave. I gave Massey up over a year ago. I had an epic fight with a friend of mine over Massey ages ago. I lost my shit on him ages ago. Rand Paul said he would have voted for the bill if had they raised the debt ceiling by only 500 billion as opposed to 5 trillion. And I'm like, oh, so you're telling me you're a whore? We're just negotiating on price now. Okay.
Yeah, but that's a big price difference.
No, it really isn't. Not if your plan is to expand the market for U.S. Treasuries in a massive way, which is what the stablecoin whole thing about stablecoins is all about. Trump and Dissent are setting up a massive demand for U.S. Treasuries, and the last thing you want to do is derail that process in the midst of the midterms, which is what $500 billion would have done. So that's their plan. Whether they pull it off or not, whether you agree with it or not, no, that's their plan. And we're already fucked anyway. So why in the hell don't we attempt to do this? Remember, everything that he's trying to do is to change the way we fund the government, change the way we pay for the government. If our goal is if our goal is that, then you take the debt ceiling off the table for the next fucking 5 years. And this is the other thing. Everybody who would normally argue with the whole debt ceiling thing is nothing but movie theater anyway, which it is. Then why condition your vote on such an important thing other than because you're ideologically possessed to the point where you don't believe in tariffs, you don't believe this, you don't believe that. So that's all about Rand Paul's ego. The same thing with Thomas Massey. I'm just over it with both of them. And MTG comes out right after the bill passes to say, hey, let's, then she backs Trump on getting rid of property taxes.
To just I get you guys.
The
problem is I don't, it's not for me. I don't care about the details of how we fund the government. I know it's important. I want the government to be smaller.
I agree.
Well, I don't see evidence. I don't see progress. I don't see progress.
And a lot of the deficit. See, the thing is, a lot of the deficit calculations that were put out by the CBO budget scoring, which again was under normal circumstances, everybody in this room would sit there and go, "The CBO budget scoring go bullshit." They always get it wrong because they're all a bunch of right. So now all of a sudden we're supposed to use that as Bible truth. A lot of what this bill does is it pushes the funding for a lot of these projects that have been done at the federal level down to the states, and let the states decide what they're going to deal with.
There's also an awful lot of firing going on.
It's actually emphasizing the federal government.
There's a lot
At a
of
budget.
there's a lot of firing going on and shutting down federal agencies and hiring freeze that was instituted just a few days ago. So
Are we
I,
documenting that? I found that hard to document. Those are kind of headline
well, it's
numbers. Do
been
we know?
muddy. It's been muddied because of all the temporary stays that the regional
Right.
judge
So,
put
so
on.
the
But that's over with now. That
when
part's over with.
when will we have a number that says here's what we
Give
caught?
it a few weeks because
You think a few weeks, really?
those
Okay.
temporary blockages, whatever you call those things, that the
Say,
judges issued, they're over
Injunctions.
injunctions. They're over now, and the hiring freeze just started, I think, within the last 10 days. And we know that agencies are doing wholesale firings, mass firings. The Supreme Court just declared 2 days ago that Trump was within his rights to do mass firings. And I
Yeah.
think that you're going to see the size of the government get a lot smaller, just
Okay,
personnel wise.
then I'd be much more on board. Now, I've also heard that we're stuck with the current spending patterns until October because of the way the fiscal year works. So in some sense, they're just waiting for October to really show up. And I don't know the details, and I don't intend to burn more ATP to figure out those details either. I will wait till October. But what I'm saying is at some point there's going to be a report card and it better show some A's.
I agree.
Yeah, and it's also
I
going to
agree.
show. It's also going to show in the economic and financial numbers. And I think that the spending and the deficit spending that we're describing is really much more of a monetary play, a currency play, a
Mm-hmm.
kind of a game,
Mm-hmm.
which eventuates in what Tom has said about our ability to keep selling bonds because we're going to have to roll over so many bonds.
Here's one that you can actually take to the bank because we've done this. We've now have 3 months of this, or two quarters of this in a row. The Treasury is multiple times now, 2 quarters in a row under Scott Bessent has said that we need to issue less debt than we had originally projected to need to get through this quarter. They've done this 2 quarters in a row. They've spent less money than they thought they were going to spend. That's done. That's fact.
Okay.
It's out there.
It's a good
and
start.
It's a significant amount of money. And it's not, it's not nothing. It's the process. So let's start there. I'm going with that. I'm going with, we've got 70,000, whatever, 70,000 applications for the $5 million Visa card, the gold card, Visa gold cards. That's $350 billion. Tariffs are bringing in somewhere between 20, every month it's going up. They're now up to what, $32 billion that they brought in last, or was it $27 billion they brought in?
Well, the discussion of the tariffs is a complete retard fest. I mean, no, there's so much stupidity on the tariffs. It's just ridiculous.
It is.
And I don't understand tariffs well, but I understand it enough to know that there's a lot of bullshit out there. And so the people say, well, tariffs a tax. I go, okay, that's good because then we don't have to tax other fucking taxes. And by the way, some of that tax is going to be absorbed by China, and some of it is going to be, if you can tax us in a way that also shoves, industry back to the United States and stuff, what a good tax, right? We're going to have to pay tax anyways because we owe a fuck ton of money. But I want to see the taxes decrease elsewhere. I want to see us get a narrower deficit somehow. I want to see the evidence that those tariffs represent a revenue stream that are actually alleviating the problem that I'm concerned about. Now, here's the other problem we have with bringing industry back to the United States. Who the fuck is going to do this work? We are a country of incompetence at this point. Now, here's what you can't find. You can't find someone to man the 7-Eleven. Every 7-Eleven has we are hiring. But if you look around, it's unclear to me. It's unclear to me that technically we're going to have, you build a $20 billion chip plant. Who's going to run that? Who's going to make
Well, I
those
think that is
chips?
true. But, one of the components of this program that Trump is trying to ramp up is a pretty robust vocational training program. So I don't think that they're unaware.
It does not take long to train pipe fitters. It
No,
really
I know
doesn't. It takes
my
6
son
months.
has started a company to train HVAC guys. My son has
There you go.
started a company
There
to
you
train
go.
HVAC guys. Right.
There you go.
I think, for example, there's going to be far less kids going to college.
I do
I
too.
agree.
Way far less kids
Yeah.
going to college. And so
And,
I
and
think
it's
we can
funny.
get there. but we can't. This is not a 6-month adventure. This is
No.
going. This is so. I don't think Trump is going to reap the benefits of this plan. Trump may end up being a historically important branch,
Yes.
fork in the road.
Yes.
But I don't think Trump's going to be the one celebrating it. I think we're going to look back and say, "Oh, this was really an important point in history."
I'm not even convinced that it's going to work at all because
I'm not convinced it's going to work at all.
I
either.
think that we are heading towards a sort of a Seneca Cliff kind of event.
I agree.
I don't mean to like dampen the conversation, and I'm with you, Jim and Tom. Like I'm fucking
What do you
sick.
mean dampen? We're in the valley of death. How can you dampen that conversation?
Well, to go from the cheery stuff of tariffs and bonds and stuff to I'm with you guys. Like I would be fine if I never heard Epstein's name again, but it's not the same as like Bill Clinton getting a blowjob or Trump grabbing
It's
a
not.
pussy.
It's not.
There is something where like and I don't have kids, but like I can't go. I don't want to hear about like if it's true, and maybe it's not. There has to be like a moral triage. There has to be like an ethical triage of where even with the, plans for like an invasion of the US. You have tiers of we're willing to nuke this and nuke that, and you fall, and then you have like this is it. If if we can't look at children getting forcibly penetrated by adults and go, we have to figure that out. Then like I don't. Maybe I'm just black pill, but like bonds and tariffs and factory, none of that.
Seems small.
Well, none of that mattered. I mean, I think of how like blessed I was, nuclear parents, like loving family. Like, I can't ever imagine being like, even now at 34, I think my dad would hunt someone down to the ends of the earth and kill him with a good old deer rifle. I just, that's not. I get it. I don't like that. It is boring. It is boring and it's exhausting. But if it's,
But it also gets at the question
but my point is
are
I can't.
decisions being made in our best interest, or are they totally being made?
That too, but even before that, there is like a certain point of like, if we're not gonna like hunt down the people that raped kids and skin them alive, I don't care what
I
the
agree.
tariffs are. Because if I was a kid, I wouldn't be able to understand why mom and dad aren't coming to help me. And I don't mean to be like high horse preaching. I'm not at all, but like and it's not like it's something like we can do where it's like, all right, yeah, I guess we'll go. Tom's like, all right, I'll go figure it out. Like, I get that. I don't mean to be like throwing that on you, but like, do you know what I mean? Like, it kind of like, I don't care if we put a rover on Mars or if we let in more MS-13. Like, as Tim Dillon said, MS-13 is not asking you to fund the Ukraine war. Until the people in charge are not the ones that are like turning a blind eye, if not actively facilitating the raping of children. Man, I kind of have a hard time looking at like any other
So you
timeline
just
as
want to hunt these guys down to the ends of the earth
no, what I mean is it can't be something that Trump goes, why are we still talking about it? And we all go, amen. People are like, true MAGA is just putting it behind them. I'm like, no, it can't be that. It can't be that. If you don't do that, then
Tommy,
it's not a species worth saving. Sorry.
Tommy, ready? No. Your point is very well taken. Now let's talk about the time.
Okay.
Epstein is in the past. He's dead. His operation is dead,
Sure.
and everything that happened
it's
under
all
his and it's all done. Like,
yeah, no, I get that, and maybe
now,
they did shut it all down, and there's no one to
can we
save.
stop? Can we stop any more of it from happening?
Okay, yeah, no, I get that.
Okay,
No, I get
don't
that.
want to see anybody else's.
It's a sum cost.
I want, like, we all want justice, dude.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't live in a world that's fair.
Yeah. No,
So can we stop the next horror?
Yeah.
Like, it's look, my
The answer is no. The answer is no.
I know. My dad was a police officer, right? Dad was NYPD. I wrote about this last month for the newsletter. And I asked him at one point, right before he died, it was during the Rodney King riots. And he said, and I said, why aren't they arresting any people? And he said, Thomas. Now, this is a man who worked Martin Luther the night, Bedford Stuyvesant during Martin Luther King's, the night Martin Luther King got shot. Okay. And he said, Thomas, you can't. Because for every arrest you make, you got to take a cop off the scene. Every cop you take off the scene is somebody who's not there to protect somebody who's not rioting, not looting, not pillaging, and everything else. You have a choice. You can punish the wicked or you can protect the innocent. That's all we got. And so now that's the moral triage
Yeah.
that Tommy's talking. And these are the hard choices that you have to make. And my dad was so freaking Catholic.
Your dad's
He
a
hated
cop.
that.
Yeah.
When he was a freaking sedevacanthus, probably a sedevacanthus for Christ's sake. And he was so angry at where the Catholic Church went. And he had to make those choices every night.
Yeah.
Until he started jockeying the desk in the South Bronx.
Release the tapes.
Yeah. But maybe not until after this is all
over. That never will be. See, here's the problem with Trump. First and foremost, there's odd psychology where the left, when asked to walk around the shoes of the right, they can't do it, and the right can do it for the left. The psychologists have studied this. The two parties have different ability to steel man arguments for some reason. So if you asked a right winger to name 10 reasons why someone hates Trump, we would be able to whip them off without even opening up our notes. If you asked the left 10 reasons why we like Trump, they would be completely flabbergasted, right? The problem is not so much that Trump isn't a highly flawed character and Trump isn't already in fucking trouble and all this shit. It's that if Trump doesn't pull it off, no one will. He is sort of the last gasp. And I think this Epstein thing has really rattled people. And it was the garishness that they did it. It wasn't like, I'm sorry. Like the way you said it was fine. We got to move on for various reasons. This is, I'm sorry. If he had stood up there and said, look, half the prime ministers would be thrown in the fucking prisons. We can't do this. I'm sorry. I'm going to let it go. I'd even be okay with that compared to what they did. Right? If they said all the prime ministers would go to prison, I can't do it. I'd be okay with that, relatively.
But again, and I agree with you, Dave. I'd love for somebody to finally admit that. But here's the problem: the minute he says that, at the next level happens.
I want to see the next level. Then I guess I want to see the next level.
Yeah. But is preventing the next level?
Then why aren't we prosecuting these people? Why isn't Emmanuel Macron going to jail? Why isn't this guy going to jail?
Because we haven't gotten to the next level. We can't get to the next level.
It's not. It's not. It's not a good answer.
You have to either have to accept the fact that there's not going to be quote unquote justice, or that this is the basis.
It's not about
with which we can solve the future problem.
It's not about justice. It's about undermining a power structure that is destructive, in my opinion.
Fair.
Right. Let's ask this question. So the United States foreign policy in the Middle East has killed, crudely speaking, 5 million people.
Yep.
I don't want to hear about Holocaust without that one being mentioned. Sure. Right. And we all signed off on it in various ways by either shutting our mouths, and I write about this shit against this shit. And, the Iraq war is obviously a big catastrophe, but Yemen and Syria, look what the fucking abortion's going on in Syria now because we want to bring down Assad, who, by the way, I can't tell you what the fuck Assad was doing. All I know is that he didn't seem like a problem until he got killed. And now he seems like a big fucking problem. And so the bottom line is that
he wasn't killed. He was just moved to Russia.
Right. But the point being is if there is no consequence, then there's nothing to stop these guys from being this evil. And so don't be surprised if there is no consequence that it turns into a French Revolution.
Yeah, this
we're not going to win that
consequence is a huge thing, but that's why I think that the Brennan and Comey business is important.
I would love
that's the only other
case.
Major source of bringing consequence to a large body of people who have fucked over the country.
But they have to be indicted and convicted. They can't just be brought in front of a congressional committee.
No, well, they're not talking about that now. That's not what the chatter is. The chatter is real indictments coming down.
Prosecuted by Moran.
And one of the points that the FBI made today to try to clarify what people may be thinking, that they just brought this Comey and Brennan thing into the arena overnight just to quiet down people over the Epstein case. They said, no, we have been working on this for months. And that's been my supposition. And I've been writing about that for months, saying Patel and Bongino must be working in the background to construct cases. And I think that's exactly what's been going on. It's
Yeah,
just
I'm hoping that's true. In fact,
and I've heard those rumblings as well. They've talked about this stuff.
Mhm.
You know, they have talked. They've mentioned it. Like this is not the first time I've heard discussions of what we're going to do to John Brennan.
by the way,
So
Diana West's second book, she talked about both Brennan and Comey's background. And those two are dark motherfuckers. Those are not just their backgrounds are way deeper and darker than most people realize.
Yeah, Brennan I know about, but not Comey. I'm not sure what his.
Comey has I can't name the names because they're not that familiar to me, but Comey has a sort of a theoretical foundation that's deeply based in Marxist thinking. Comey traces back to some very
Brennan's a comic.
very bad guys by U.S. standards. And I can't remember the names. Frankfurt School philosophers. Comey's got some darkness in there.
And when Brennan was CIA station chief at, I forget the location, but isn't that the one that stamped the passports for the 19 hijackers? He was the top dog at that station.
Mm.
Well, I don't believe the 19 hijackers did
Well,
shit.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's
yeah.
that.
Did they? Yeah, I get you. Yeah, and it was all playing in their
John Brennan's career makes no damn sense.
None whatsoever. None whatsoever.
John Brennan was elevated to station chief and CIA director with zero.
He should have flunked every goddamn test it took to get past. He should have never been let near those organizations if they were legit.
Which is why I've talked to intelligence guys like that have been on the show, and I've talked to them off show specifically, and they've said, I'll paraphrase it, the primary thing you go for in those agencies is who administers the lie detector test, because that is how you get people that don't deserve to be up. If you're trying to compromise it, that's how what you take control of. Is you go, give me the lie detector test job, because then I can let people through that everyone else would go, how did that guy get through? Well, if you got through the lie detector test, that's how foreign or domestic adversaries go about taking these agencies.
What's also true is they're independently funded, they're independently run. They are the equivalent of a Mexican drug cartel, except for the Mexican drug cartels at least are answering to superpowers who are letting them do their thing. Yeah. These guys are not. I think the best way to think the CIA is probably a sleeper cell model where something bad happens and the head of the CIA says, hey, fuck, did we do that? I don't think.
Yeah. It's exactly like that Coen Brothers movie, Burn After Reading.
Right, yes. right.
They really got it.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, again, let's talk about what's really happening. What did I see the other day? I keep talking about I keep thinking in terms of the money, right? Which is how do you really stop the process from continuing? Well, you got to get rid of the money flows, and we've started with the public money flows. Like USAID is done. With the State Department came out the other day.
Is that true? Is that true? I assume so. But
yes,
they said
true.
FEMA was done, and then it reappeared. It resurrected.
Okay. So USAID, the State Department came out the other day with an official notice saying 90% of the money that was allocated to USAID didn't even go to where it was supposed to go.
Right.
And it's been now completely shut down. Okay. And destroyed. So that's number one.
Act Blue shut down.
What's that?
Act Blue shut down.
There's a win if that's true. There's a win if that's true.
That's a win. Okay, here's another one. What prompted the LA riots in June?
Probably money from tech billionaires.
No,
George Soros.
What started? Well, yeah. No, what I mean is, why did they choose that moment to riot? They chose that moment to riot because Trump and ICE were issuing. Tom Homan made this point abundantly clear on multiple public interviews. We were serving warrants in conjunction with money laundering and cartel activity out of these particular dry cleaning establishments, whatever the hell it was. It was not about deporting hardworking lettuce-picking Mexicans, sending money home to their grandmas, okay? Which is the way the fucking commies in LA framed it, and they framed it in the news. This was specifically targeting going after cartel money in LA to break that whole thing up, and they went fucking bananas. So now
are you sure we're going after cartel money? Because I think the entire drug trade of the world is run by the Vatican, the CIA, and organized crime.
Well, yeah, no, I agree, but
the cartels are organized crime.
That's right.
I
No, no,
agree
no.
that
But I think
Douglas
there's no
Valentine.
chance you'll get rid of the drug trade. And there's
And
no chance that the
unless
war on drugs is completely fabricated.
unless, and I'll try to play devil's advocate to my previously damp position, it's what Tom's saying is they're going for it all, and there is
Who's they? Trump?
a pro human enterprise, and a lot of people
Okay.
go around starts around Kennedy. I think we all kind of agree with that, unless they're going for it all, and that's the because you're right. It's all run by the intelligence agencies. It would be that they're going like
yeah.
they're going for a counter coup that hasn't happened in 1,000 years. Which is,
Public
I also
money,
get them now, and now I'm
private
selling
money.
the moon, and it's like, well, that's a very fantastical explanation for why they're allowed to fuck. I get it, Tom.
Public money, private money, institutional money. They're going after, I keep seeing the evidence, I keep seeing the formation of a process. So you rid of the public money by cleaning up the spending, private money by first you take away the public money where they're using our tax money to deracinate us, gaslight us, and destroy us from within.
Deracinate is a great word.
It's
Deracinate is a phenomenal word.
Yeah.
By the way,
Yes.
just for the record, while they're doing this, they're stealing the money. This cost me $3.15.
Yeah.
Right? We are suffering. Yeah, yeah. I watched a guy go to the convenience store yesterday and he bought 2 packs of cigarettes for $34 fucking dollars.
I bought a monster yesterday for $3.29.
You know, I go to the
But therefore we are suffering. We are suffering.
Not just Epstein Island, it's us.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the institutional money, just to finish it off, the institutional money is the system of debt and taxes via the central bank and the quote unquote public money. Who's on what side of what?
The other thing about money, the money thing is also money is a currency for power. So I think that if you haven't been paying attention to this shit, you think of money as just money, and that's not what it is. It is power. That is just the way you being count the power. Yeah, it's tokenized power. That's exactly right.
So the interesting part about this, I don't know if you guys watched the roundtable that at the ECB on the 1st of July. This is Jerome Powell, Christine Lagarde, Andrew Bailey from the BOE, Ueda from the Bank of Japan, and then I think his name is Yi from the South Korean central bank. 50 minutes worth of boilerplate speak from the central bankers until the last 2 questions. The first one was about whether Jerome Powell was on board with the changes to the supplemental leverage ratio, which is the banks, and what the banks have to hold. I've done a podcast with Kate Long about this. It's very important. It's a little geeky, but it's really important. We have a lot of potential loan capital tied up in excess reserves that the banks have to hold because of the SLR. That's been gotten away with. It could free up as much as $5.5 trillion worth of loanable capital within the United States economy, because that's what the banks are having to hold against their U.S. Treasury reserves. Now, it seems really dumb to have to hold extra capital against the risk-free asset in the financial system. That's the SLR. Powell's answer to that was, of course, no, I am not against the thing we voted for on the FOMC and that the Trump administration wanted. We all wanted. So Powell in dissent, completely on board with getting rid of the SLR, which is an incredibly important part of freeing up our capital. The way I like to look at it is the SLR is one of those things that would take our more competitive banks and make them less competitive versus global banks. It's another one of those Basel III. The Basel III endgame is a similar type of thing. Just think of the Lilliputians, binding down Gulf. This is what these fucking people do all the time. The second thing he was asked about was stable coins and the Genius Bill. And for a guy who's taking it up the ass from Trump on a daily basis, Powell was like, "No, we're working with. We were trying to get this done during get rational crypto regulation put forth during the Biden administration. We're cockblocked every turn. We're working with the Trump administration to work through the banking regulations on this, and we're on board with it. This is very.
So, well, let me ask you this,
important.
Tom.
These are
You
very important bits of institutional reform of the monetary and banking system. I think Powell setting the Fed up to be rolled up, not rolled up into the Treasury, but to be disempowered.
You just described dramatic enhancements of liquidity, correct?
Yes.
What is the evidence the world needs more liquidity?
In the U.S. Treasury market?
I'm just talking liquidity. I see an economy that's suffering from liquidity.
Well, it depends. It depends whether you're. How do you define liquidity?
Well, that's the good question. But freeing up $5 trillion of lendable money.
Hold it. Is liquidity capital, or is it just the ability to sell an instrument that you have? Liquidity. I don't think that's properly understood.
Well, I don't think it is either. But the point is, I don't think we need to make money more loanable. I think the system is already breaking from the fact that we've had 40 years of just this non-stop cranking open the spigot.
Yeah, and the more you do that, the more
terrible results.
And the more you do that, the more unreal the remaining capital becomes. And the more unreal the more unreal the collateral is.
Mm-hmm. Your collateral is now treasuries, right? Your collateral. By the way, the
idea is moving back
because that would mean that the collateral is money, which is what the treasury.
We're moving back to much more collateral.
Say that again.
You broke up, Tom.
I'm just saying, gold is moving back towards the collateral. The definition of collateral is changing. We're watching bearer assets move towards the monetary system.
Right, because the old collateral is becoming meaningless. It's losing its meaning and its value.
The question is the following, and I know Dave and I are on absolutely opposite sides of this in this respect, which is the following. I think it would be fair to say that they would prefer to see the general price level fall.
No, not necessarily fall, but I do believe that when BlackRock can buy up single family houses,
I agree,
at an interest rate of 0.15%, someone should be shot. Now, I do believe.
Can they do that today? BlackRock.
Well,
by the
let
way,
me ask you this.
Speaking of BlackRock, just to give a little bit of balance here, BlackRock the other day announced that they're abandoning their Ukrainian rebuilding project because they couldn't get any investors. Even though that was all part of the whole process. And the reason for that is because we're really not involved, because we're not going to get involved at all in the war in Ukraine.
Because Russia is winning the war in Ukraine and is going to finalize and conclude it.
And let Europe deal with it. And BlackRock is like, oh, so we're not going to have the American government backstop our business anymore.
But tell me what private equity. What does private equity do for this world? What is private equity?
We're actually fighting a deflationary wave here if we're not careful.
I think we need deflation. I do think we need deflation. I do think we need deflation.
We need a lot of money to disappear.
We need the fake crap to go away. We need we need NVIDIA to get priced right. It might be painful, Tom, and I know you're nervous about it, but the fact is, there's shit out there that's not worth a fuck. The average private equity firm doesn't mark to market, so the pensions that hold them don't know that they're owning trash.
Because you know what, you're not really describing a system. You're describing a racketeering operation.
That's right. A Ponzi scheme.
And here's the thing: I'm actually not even like trying to defend the existing system. I'm not at all. In no way, manner, shape, or form. What I am actually trying to do is thread the needles so that we don't wind up without a credit crisis in the United States. Okay, because I don't want a credit crisis in the United States.
I'm not sure that's possible.
I don't think it's possible.
That's actually healthy. That actually lends against productive processes. We have a system right now that is misallocating capital, which is what you're saying.
Yes.
Correct? Okay.
Yes.
I would like to see a system where we allocate capital properly, right? More properly. Correct?
You know how you do that? Less capital.
No, absolutely not. That is not that I disagree with.
Make capital more precious.
No. You make the cost of capital more expensive.
Right.
That's different. That's different than lowering the actual amount of capital.
Well, that will naturally lower the amount of capital. If you have to,
I think it will. Hasn't yet.
When did they make
The Fed's been
capital
at
more
4.5.
expensive?
Dave, the Fed's been at 4.5% or higher for over
Four and a
3
half
years.
percent is chicken shit.
In today's market?
It's chicken shit.
In today's market?
Let me ask you this.
Well,
Again,
Paul Volcker went up to like 18%.
right.
So, but
If,
that
if
was
I,
Volcker, and it was a much different world than we're in today.
I know the world that we're in now is one that was created over the last 40 years due to thinking that we would just keep worrying about the future later. That's my point.
This is beyond the scope of the conversation I want to have today. Not because I'm punting or anything, but because I can't do this today. I don't have the desire to. This is a 3-hour conversation, so I don't want to have right.
This is probably a 6-month conversation.
It might be. It's good. We've been doing it for a while now. But seriously, this is one of those things where we're going to have to. We cannot have historical discussions about what's right or what's the right way forward until we understand what's actually changing. Which is, if we're changing the way the government funds itself and the way we actually account for risk, what we want is the proper pricing of risk. Okay, that's what we want. But we can't have a proper pricing of risk if we have a government that runs a $1.7 trillion a year deficit.
Oh boy, you just said exactly what I've been saying.
Half of the federal budget, on top of the stuff that we fund through taxes, goes to shit that none of us want.
Exactly.
Okay.
We just agreed.
Okay, yes. Meaning we can have G as part of the GDP calculations halved. And if we do that, we can still have all margins. You can have G and let the private market take up that halving of G and put it into other aspects of the economy and keep GDP, the general pricing level as we have now, the wage levels, and that's what they're trying to do. They're going to try and hold this level where we are. We're never going back to $1 Cokes.
No, I don't.
Hate to tell you that.
We in theory could, but it will be a catastrophic world. Here's what I'd like, though. I'd like to see government employees filling those 7-Eleven hiring positions.
I agree.
That might happen. There's so many of them are being laid off.
I want to see.
And by the way, I'd like to see some of the guys working at colleges doing the same thing. This is the distortion that has been caused. We can't get people to do the menial labor who should be doing menial labor, and we I don't think bringing chip making back to the United States is going to solve our problem.
I agree.
I'd like to see it come back, but that will be inflation. That will be inflation.
We know all that stuff. Dave, we have an overinvestiture in white collar jobs that are making too much money.
Right.
And AI is going to make those, and AI is going to have the price of those jobs.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be an English major right now.
I wouldn't want to be a middle manager at any company right now.
Right.
Yeah, AI is also going to fuck up everything that we do.
There's that too.
Oh, I hate the AI future.
But there's capital efficiencies that are coming that are going to be deflationary, that are going to be very dangerous for the existing housing market. And I'm telling you, housing market, the way the economy is organized, what they're trying to do is hold this level that we have now. Okay.
Yeah.
And grow wages and grow the carry costs of the houses that we have now, while the reorganization takes place, while those guys lose their jobs and are having to be retrained. You have to shift all of this capital towards the in the way that you're talking about, but you have to do so without causing a 60% collapse in the housing market.
So labor and capital naturally fight.
Again, this is another Trumpism. You got to kind of accept the fact that we're fucked. We're at this level now. We're not going to go back to a $1 Coke environment. We're not going to go back to $3 a pound ground.
Yeah, but I don't want to go to a $6 Coke environment.
I don't either. I don't think that's what they're trying to do. I think they're actually trying at best to hold. We're going to have to pay for it with stagflation.
So labor and capital are naturally battling each other. So when capital becomes expensive, it's cheaper to hire a guy, right? Mm-hmm. When capital becomes cheap, it's easier to use this capital to buy some fucking robot to do the shit, right? Mm-hmm. So now the average Joe can't pay for shit because he's competing against all this fucking capital. And so the capital has been underpriced. And it's been underpriced. The Godonkin experiment that I do all the time is I said, look, if you had to buy a 30-year treasury and hang on to it for 30 years, what interest rate would you demand? And the answer is not 5. The answer is more like 10. And therefore the treasuries are priced wrong. So there is a fundamental problem there. They're not priced to be a revenue stream. They're priced to fuck you is what they are.
What we're trying to do is get to the point where that 5%
is adequate.
Actually, I'll be honest with you. I think that once we get past, if and when we can get past the debt rollover crisis that Mama Yellen gave us, that commie Mama Yellen gave us,
flat-headed hobbit.
I think we are going to be looking at 7% treasuries, 30-year treasuries.
That'll hurt.
It'll hurt. Sure,
yeah.
I agree. But but at the same time, if you can, this is the thing I think it's important to understand. If you can lower the actual carry costs through taxes and regulations and everything else, in order to make the number that the people get out of their wage and the value they get out of their wage for their time, if you can improve that, which is where we have to get to, right? That's what we have to get to. You've got to improve the efficiency. You've got to improve labor's ability to generate wealth, and we're probably talking a 25 to 30% adjustment from where we are on a gross basis. If someone makes $30 an hour and he's got $3 an hour left over to spend on improving his life, we've got to get that from $3 to $6, right, or to $5 an hour, so that he can actually build wealth. And we're not building wealth.
I'm listening.
So that's the model I've got in my head. That's the 5 differential equations that I'm trying to solve in my head, to present to everybody. Like, there's multiple ways of getting to the end of this. The goal is what you're talking about, Dave. I'm not arguing with you about that.
I'm kind of wondering if there's not going to be the same size of a managerial class having good incomes, then who is this supposed working class going to be working for?
AI.
Or themselves.
I mean,
you have to bring back small business.
Well, now let's look at what the lockdown did. They took out 2 million of them. I mean, we went so far backwards. That was the most boys, talk about people you want to hang by the balls.
That's a whole area we haven't even touched on, which is that's the medical fuckery that went on.
The medical fuckery that still goes on.
Yeah.
Kennedy's been a huge disappointment to me. Kennedy's been.
I think he's behaving heroically and strategically.
So when are we going to get rid of these killer vaccines? Is he doing it stepwise?
Yes, I think he is.
Okay. He is getting rid of them.
I think the opposition I think is ferocious.
No doubt.
But I don't want, for example, the changes that Gabbard are Sundance over conservative free houses. When he's talking about the IC, he's absolutely in his wheelhouse. I have problems with Sundance commentary in other areas, but when he's talking about the IC, he's like, no, Gabbard is killing it at DNI, reforming all these agencies, and they're freaking out every other week. They're trying to get rid of it.
What I like about Gabbard is she's not on the news every day making preposterous claims.
That's why it's important.
Yeah, and Ratcliffe wasn't either. And what Ratcliffe produced last week was basically a blueprint to predicate a prosecution of Brennan.
Yes.
Because he's a former prosecutor, he's not an intel guy. He was a U.S. attorney in Texas before he was a congressman.
How about this? The people that they're parading in front of us for us to be outraged by, what if they're just second lieutenants jumping out of the foxholes?
Right.
What if we're supposed to? What if Trump is literally? What if these
Omaha
Bondi
Beach
and Patel and Bongino? What if these guys are the ones that we're supposed to be angry with? So that remember, what was Epstein about? Epstein was not about the pedophilia. It was about building the thing behind the closed doors. It was about building the NGO network and building what we now today call Davos. That was all built behind the scenes while Jeffrey Epstein was running the influence campaign, the influence operation. And then you can burn that down as a moral outrage thing at the end, because conservatives will always overreact to the moral outrage because that's the way we're wired. Because we're higher in conscientiousness than libertarians and shit libs. We are, right? Now, which is part of the reason why I'm no longer a libertarian. Now, what if Trump's doing the same thing? You know, get angry with the FBI director, get angry with the attorney general while the DNI takes care of starts and CIA they start taking care of business behind the scenes. They're taking all the heat off of Bobby Kennedy.
I hope you're right.
So do I. I don't know that I'm right, but like at the end of the day, like what do we have to lose by having a little bit of hope? Because no hope is the default fucking position. What happens if
I'm
Trump
not
loses?
at the no hope level.
I'm not speaking rhetorically. I'm not speaking
Right.
to use in specific. In this has been my framework for the last few days as I really ingest everything that's happened. I'm like, what do we lose if we present the hope scenario? A little egg on our face if we're wrong.
Well, and so that's where Trump is sort of the sense of a last hope.
Yes, I've been thinking this I've been in that mindset now for a while. I really have because
This is what the left doesn't understand at all.
The other thing is the reason why I believe that is because I do believe that the Davos, as we've known it our entire lives, and that we've all been imprinted by, is on its last legs as well. And so they have to go and pull every freaking stop and pull every card and play every card. And they're going to drive us completely freaking crazy in the process because it's a war and, you fight like dogs all the way to the end. And it's not going to be a linear path to the end.
They are going mad dog right now. You got the Democratic Party basically calling for blood and assassination and killings.
I know.
How much worse can it get?
Right. Ambushing firefighters and
trannies, trantifas. I mean, the sickest fucks you can imagine.
Oh God, I'm trying not to be in a cult.
Well,
Dave, I'm just saying, let me put it this way. Tommy and I were talking about it before you guys showed up. We were talking. I'm up here in Tennessee, right next door to the property I bought up here. And people look at me all the time. They're like, "Why are you moving to Tennessee?" I said, "It's not because I don't know how to hedge my fucking bets. I want to be farther away from humanity than I am right now."
Right.
Like I'm not dumb. But I am going to still try and present the best case I can for us to get out of this. Because if we don't put that into the world, then we have no fucking hope.
Yeah.
Because we put no real pressure on the universe to improve itself. If we just one of the things I learned, I used to be really, really, really black pilled as a teenager and as a young man. I mean, really black pilled. And one of the things that the first lesson I learned when I had my libertarian conversion was that people don't suck. People are amazing for how well they persevere in the face of the fuckery, as Jim would put it. And that was a big turning point for me somewhere around the age of 34. Okay.
How old I am.
And, I've been trying to live with that model for as long as possible and stay integrated with both sides of that aspect of my personality. The one who's perfectly capable of catastrophizing on every day ending in a lie. And the other guy who says, "No, you know what? I got a 19-year-old daughter. I'm going to fight like hell to make sure that she has a future. And she has a say in what future that's going to be. I don't know. This is the best I got. And if Trump's the best I've got, well, I got to go with that. And I'm okay with it."
And I think that is an important because it's very easy to blackpill, and not blackpilling doesn't mean you're stupid or delusional, but it does mean like, hey man, the military is this is the way I think my buddy Dale explained it to me. He was like, they don't give a fuck about anything that you want or like. Your bed sucks, your food sucks, your water sucks, your sleep, everything sucks. The only things that are there are the things that are absolutely needed: body armor, bullets, a helmet, If they give you food, it's so that your muscles don't shut down. It's not because they like you. One of the things in that Spartan environment is morale. They don't boost morale because they like you. They look at it as a vital part of the machine needed to fight and kill. And I think that's the wisdom of what you're saying, Tom, is being positive isn't just well, he's just got a sunny outlook. Like when the military gives it to you, they don't give a they don't, when you're back and you need to go to the VA, they're like, no, fuck off. Like they don't give you anything. One of the things they do not take away is morale because they look at it as valuable as a bullet or a GPS or a compass or a bandage or whatever. And I think that is something to remember. Like it doesn't mean be delusional, it doesn't mean put your head in the sand, but it does mean like, hey, you gotta fucking keep like a light on the horizon. Even if you're hallucinating it, you gotta move towards it. You have to. What it You have to, because otherwise just shoot yourself, you know? I know that's a very cheery sign off. Blow your brains out.
It's that's my
No, it's you
my
have to. You have
my
to
frame of
look.
thought.
Yeah. Yeah, without hope, I mean it's yeah. Um I say we wrap it up, and I was just thinking earlier when we were all laughing, like, man, I see the future of these foursomes being eventually like Willy Wonka, like the grandparents. We just have two long beds, and we made a feet to feet, just everyone yelling and just being old grandpas. I feel like that's the natural evolution of this. Um, but for everybody, well, it's not live. It'll be up tomorrow. Please go to the description. Please go follow their Twitters, websites, blogs, Substacks, Patreons, all that good shit. Um, yeah. And as always, guys, thank you so much for the time out of your day. And also, me going on the whole Epstein thing, I don't want to. When you see like a fucking fat, homeless, unemployed liberal being like, everyone deserves Medicare, it's like, yeah, I agree with you, but you're not special by pointing out that that people should have homes. Like, you have to provide it. I also don't want to come across as like some, you know, we should do this. It's like it's very easy to point out what's bad and then also not
Well,
provide the solution.
as a genetics major with an interest in evolution, I happen to be also reading a book called The Moral Animal right now. Everyone does not have the right. Darwinian selection takes out the weak.
Correct.
And so the problem is in the modern era, the weak are not necessarily that maladapted. They just happen to be on the receiving end of some fucking missile.
Yeah.
The guy made an interesting case. I'll close with this without going into it, but he made an arithmetically airtight case for why monogamy benefits men and hurts women. It's a really interesting case, and the question is why? Why would we have evolved a cultural system where monogamy in an egalitarian society? Why would that evolve? And the answer is because polygamy leaves more men sex starved and mateless
Hmm.
and creates chaos.
In the Darwinian sense too, I'd also say just biologically, regardless of morals or ethics, a species can't continue that doesn't save the offspring.
Right.
That just
Now,
seems like a
Okay, so
calculation.
one of the things the guy hasn't talked about, but it's worth noting, is that China has a bunch of sex-starved males because of their
Iron
many years
Branch.
policy.
Yeah.
That's what we call a standing army. And what I can tell you is I would not want to go to war against an army of guys who've never been laid. They would be particularly ornery.
That's a good point. Yeah, they'll literally fuck you to death. But for now, gentlemen, let's wrap it up. I'll text and email this to you guys tomorrow when it's up. Um, yeah, dude, as always, I appreciate the time of your day. I really do enjoy talking to all you guys, and I love the odd. I just find like I'm sitting here with like a sticky note and it says Willy Wonka because I want to make the note about fucking the beds. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm an unserious person. Let me make a note about us being Willy Wonka. Um, but yeah, guys, let's wrap this shit up. Tom, Dave, Jim, thank you so much, and yeah,
Tom, don't
yeah.
hang up yet, because when he goes off record, I want to ask you something.
Oh yeah, yeah, okay. Let me stop recording. Hold on.
sure.